their concern. Um, they just some things to kind of keep on your radar. Certainly, there is a calendar flexibility bill that's been introduced by Representative Jake Johnson, which represents Transylvania County. This bill, in essence, would be for Polk, Henderson, and Transylvania counties, and it would allow school systems to start on the Monday closest to August 15th. Um, that's not that many days different from what we have with the calendar waiver of August 19th, but as you can imagine, those 5 days are significant. It only seems like 5 days, but those 5 days are a huge point of contention and argument with travel tourism industry. Um, and I'm very sensitive. First of all, that brings in a lot of money. I will just say as a disclaimer, I'm very glad. I wish they brought in 10 times as much. Great. I'm all for that. But I will sometimes just go ahead and tell you my opinions, and I wear my heart on my sleeve. And quite frankly, when I hear the arguments about how we're shortening summers or we're hurting families, if you'll notice, many of those same, not always, but many of the same people who are making those arguments are the very same people who also want to support efforts in areas such as comparing us to other countries. Well, it's kind of an interesting irony because other countries have a longer school year than we do. So you can't have the proverbial cake and eat it too. But nevertheless, that's out there. And I do appreciate Senator Johnson, or excuse me, Representative Johnson making that attempt. Indications are from a meeting I had with the superintendent's board yesterday, that's dead on arrival in the Senate. Senator Berger will assign that to some committee and it'll be in purgatory forever. So don't get too excited about it. That would allow us to complete exams easily. We've kind of figured out a way, but it's kind of compressed. Um, and you'll notice this year we're getting out by Memorial Day, so it's not really shortening the summer; it's just shifting the summer. But anyway, nevertheless, some other things that you might want to keep your eyes on. I think it's House Bill 700 70. No, that's not it. Hold on a second. I've got it right here. It is Senate Bill 700. That was introduced by Senator Edwards, which is one of our senators, Senator Heiss, and I can't pronounce this other one, Krawick. I don't know that one. But anyway, um, it's a bill entitled An Act to Require Balanced Political Viewpoints in the Implementation of Public School Instruction and Require the Online Display of Information about Instructional Materials. Um, I'm assuming there's not a noble intent in that bill. I'm just going to be frank with you. I don't know exactly what they are hoping to. I really honestly do not. I'm not being facetious. I don't know what they're hoping to accomplish there because I've walked by. I was at Brevard High School yesterday. I promise I'm not stalking you, but I walked down the hall and I listened to the things going on in your rooms and sometimes right outside the door, and it's always good instruction. So I don't know what they're hoping to accomplish with that. Uh, there are some things in history that are simply facts. And so, do you present a non fact? I don't know what the balance is on that. So, I'm a little concerned about where that may go. That is in committee right now, but I think it bears watching to see where that may go. And then there's the usual host of bills that are going to, there's a number of them that in essence increase opportunity scholarships, support charter schools, or they're things that are targeted toward schools that do not include charter schools. There is a bill about transparency and funding. Senator Edwards is connected to that one too, where that could be problematic. County commissions across our state already have the ability to require us to report our local budgets in terms of program codes all the way down to source codes. And we have more codes than any other entity other than maybe the military. Um, and so they can require that already. It doesn't change what the funding is. It's just merely, I mean, it is what it is. And You can move the shells all you want to, but the fact is it takes resources to do quality work. I don't know. I had this conversation with some elected officials before one time several years ago when they were talking about the issue of funding elementary art, music, and PE teachers. It's not that we're trying to hide the funding. It's just that it requires us to have local funding to be able to have those programs because they forget their own history. They were the ones that changed that in the legislature about 10 years ago or more on the allotments. So there's that bill that's out there, but what's problematic about this bill is it could also allow county commissions to fund based on purpose code. In other words, if once they give you the money, we give them our word we're going to spend it that way, and we do. But once they give you the money, it's yours. Nevertheless, this would in effect say, okay, well, we don't like, and I'm just picking one. They're all valuable. We don't like local funding going to that particular school or that particular program, but we do like ROTC. So we're going to fund it. That's a very dangerous direction to go down. Senator Edwards has tried that bill 2 other times. It tends to die in committee because other parts of the state are like, no, that's not good. But these are all things that are bear watching. On the local level, I will just say that I am concerned about some recent comments in the county commissioner meetings that had to do with the bond that we passed over 2 years ago. And you all tell me, jump into the screen right now and tell me if I am incorrect on this, but I think we were very explicit and specific that we told the public throughout that campaign that this was a bond for Brevard High School, Rosman High School, and Rosman Middle School. In fact, if you wanted to include all the other schools, it was going to be about $100 million. I don't like that it's that much, but when you continue to do the proverbial kicking the can down the road, things cost more. I don't know if you've all filled up your tanks lately, but things tend to go up. And so we were pretty clear about that. And so the bond had some wording in it that is just boilerplate wording, such as for educational facilities. But then I heard some comments that were made, such as, that really that doesn't tie that bond to those 3 locations, that it could be used for a variety of other things, including potentially Blue Ridge Community College. Now, they're a great partner. This is not Blue Ridge's fault. I'm having a meeting with their president and chairman of their board trustees next week. But if Blue Ridge wanted to go for a bond, they could too. And the other thing is, if they had wanted to be part of our bond campaign, or if the county commissioners had wanted them to be part of our bond campaign, they would have said so. And guess what? And I'll try to be careful how I say this, despite the inability to do simple math by one particular commissioner, it would have cost more than $68 million. That's just a fact. I mean, I'm sorry. It costs $68 million to do what we're going to do. So you cannot buy a Cadillac on a Prius budget. And so quality costs. And so I'm concerned about where that may go, because if you'll notice, those of you who are property owners, our property taxes have gone up, and nobody likes to pay higher taxes, but I personally freely am glad to, because I know it's supposed to go to the schools. That's the way it goes. I mean, we have highways because of taxes. We have other things. So that's just the way it goes. I don't know where this is going to go, but I would encourage you all to just kind of watch that and see what happens, because that is deeply concerning to me. We are $3 million into a process. And one commissioner had commented that she was still hearing concerns from some teachers at Brevard High and Rosman High that, the facilities were going to be inadequate. Well, that don't take that out of context. I wish you wouldn't, because everybody's going to want the very best. it's going to be better. It may not be everything everybody wanted. It's not everything I wanted, but it's going to be better. So I'm maybe she took that out of context. I don't know. That should not be a reason to delay this thing. And I will tell you this though, just understand legally, they do not have to issue the bonds. A county government, North Carolina has a myriad of quirky laws. If they gave school boards taxing authority, this would probably not even be a discussion. But one of those rules is that they don't, I mean, just because a bond vote passes, they're not obligated to honor it. They don't have to issue the bonds. Um, so that part's true. However, they've already raised the property taxes to do that. And so a decision not to issue bonds versus a decision to issue those or use the monies from the property tax, which was stated very clearly in their meetings that this was who got the blame for this. It was because of the school system. And so that is a different argument. And some of you, I know I'm always increasingly the oldest person around, but some of you may remember it's not that long ago. I know I think everyone here was teaching. It was about 2009 or 10 during a revaluation. They lowered property tax by 10 cents. Everybody remember that? People forget that. They lowered property tax by 10 cents because there was, some economic stress and the recession and all of that. Uh, I, my opinion again, you could have lowered it 5 cents and looked like heroes and then been stockpiling money to do all these needs now. But I guess no one has 2020 vision to the future. But nevertheless, taxes don't continue to go up. Taxes in our county have gone up for a while and then down for a while and up for a while and down for a while. So I'm kind of rattling on, but the point is just I would watch that if I were you all, because that's very deeply concerning to me, and I don't know what's going to happen. Science of readings made the news, so that's more of an elementary thing, but our teachers are really jumping on board with that. I'm glad we started, and I give a lot of credit to Carrie Norris for that we started on that. It's research based, and I saw that. Quite frankly, I saw that in my own children. My sons would not be like being called children, but especially when one of them is about 33. But the reality is they both learned to read differently. I honestly did not think William was, I just decided, okay, well, I'm an educator and my youngest son's just not going to read. He hated it. He wouldn't do it. And Pisgah Forest Elementary absolutely did everything they could to get him to. And then one summer, he just decided he wanted to read one of his older brother's books about Harry Potter, and he just started reading. Don't ask me how or what, but we did a blend of some things at home. I did from that was probably close to science reading with phonics, and it helped him. So I know children learn differently. That's a fact. So I'm glad we've embraced that. I know that Carrie's also working on some things with math. Missy's doing a lot of work on trying to work with some things on high school level, middle school, or high school level, particularly with some career pathways information. So lots of stuff going on. I'm jumping around, so I don't want to dominate the entire conversation, and I will stop and answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much. We appreciate you keeping an eye on everything. There certainly are a lot of things moving. To go back and talk about a few of those bills that you mentioned. Some of them, to borrow a phrase from Josh, who borrowed the phrase from somebody else, some of these look like solutions looking for a problem. And some of them really remind me of Lieutenant Governor's, his new task force to make sure that there's no negative indoctrination happening in our schools, which all we're trying to do is teach our students to be critical thinkers.
The Lieutenant Governor's also he's deciding if he's going to run for Congress now too. Just keep that in mind.
Right. So very interesting, but it sounds like Senator Edwards has been really busy. As a matter of fact, I was wanting to ask you about a bill that he recently co-signed or co-sponsored, and it's about publishing, or not publishing, but like whenever gender nonconforming students have conversations with school personnel, teachers, that those will then require our educators to contact parents about those. As the parent of a trans student, I must say how incredibly grateful I was for the support that our child received in Transylvania County schools. And we love our kids, both of them, so much. And I have several trans students. I know that it's important to me for them to feel like they have a place where they can feel safe, where they can talk to trusted adults. And sometimes they can't trust the adults in their homes. So I'm very concerned about this bill in particular. It's very close to my heart. My question to you is, what's your best prognostication about the likelihood of this bill going anyway?
Well, I'll say this, Meredith. You know, a lot of people out in the world have a lot of different opinions, and a lot of it's based on, you know, either misinformation or non-information. You know, North Carolina doesn't have a particularly good track record in recent years on some issues surrounding that, such as the so-called bathroom bill. Um, I think probably he's venturing, this is my opinion. I'm not a lawyer, but he seems to be venturing into an unconstitutional area, quite frankly, because there's a student safety issue in that. It would be no different from um, a student, you know, and we've had them, you know, I wish we didn't, but we've had students who have been living in very dangerous situations at home before, and they find themselves pregnant, females, and you know the ability to be able to talk to someone about that because of the risk that maybe going to a parent could really literally cause bodily harm. So I think he's venturing on an unconstitutional layer of ice, thin ice there. You know, I never say never on court cases, but I don't know if that one's going to fly because I don't understand. I haven't I haven't been able to read a logical progression in that bill as to exactly what he is trying to accomplish. If if it is that there are some parents somewhere that were totally blown away and didn't know something about their child and they're upset because they didn't know, I suppose in theory that's possible. But I think most of us know a lot of it. We don't know everything, of course. Trust me, my mom and dad didn't know everything I did when I was a senior at Brevard High School. That's probably a good thing. But humor aside, the seriousness of it is that parents have a pretty good pulse on what their children feel like. So I don't know where he's going with that. I will say this, sort of related to that conversation is this issue about Power School where um, students can have their nicknames or other names put into Power School. And we've been advised by our attorneys that right now, because Power School is wonky anyway, we've been advised to not use that field. However, I am also advising high school principals, and I think some of you know this, Meredith, you know this. I've also advised high school principals that if you have if you have a student that at graduation wants to be referred to by a different name, just refer to them by the name they want to be referred to. That is why do we have that argument? But just some thoughts.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thanks for your insight on that one. Uh, so the next question that I want to ask is sort of a broader one. You know, as educators, we're all very reflective folks, or hopefully we are. And on reflecting on the school year so far, what do you see as one of your personal greatest successes with Transylvania County Schools? And the second part of that is, if you could have a do-over, what's something that you wish you had done a little bit differently?
Let's see. Let me think about that. I don't think anything's my personal success. I think it's the success of all. I do want to clarify that. But I think we've had, well, first of all, we've had a good year. Um, So I will say a lot of things, and hopefully several of these are close enough to the target to answer your question. One is I do not like, and I've told people here, I do not like the term learning loss. I don't like that. I think that is being used right now as a political weapon. Um, we have learning delay in Transylvania County. We don't have learning loss. You cannot convince me, because of the hard work you've been doing, that students have, I mean, students have learned something this year. Did they learn as much as they could have? No. Have they learned at the rate as fast as they could have? No. But have they learned? Yes, learning progressed. Learning did not stop. There's not been, and it did not reverse itself. That is silly. So I'll say that because what we've done this year, I feel good that we've had learning this year, and I think that's incredibly important. But at the same time, we've done so with trying to stay as safe as possible with having students in our schools. So some things that I'm pleased with is that we've been able to maintain some schooling for our students. Moving forward, and slowly as we climb out of this, I'm very pleased with the fact that we work closely with great school nurses. I'm very pleased that Pisgah Health Foundation, or Blue Ridge Health Foundation, stepped up and got shots for all of us. That's critical to me. That's huge for me. There are still some people that don't want to get the shot. Some of your colleagues, they don't want to get the shot. And I'm going to respect it, because sometimes it could be because of an underlying condition or worry. Um, I think there's probably some people that don't believe in it, but I can't, I, I don't agree, but I'm glad we got the shot. So there's been some successes. What would I do differently? Oh, I will say one other thing. I think our decision for Fridays was a wise one. Um, Professional development is very important. And it's not a question of, oh, we worked hard 4 days, now we want a day off. There is no day off. The fact is, we do heavy professional development, we retool, and you'll notice like Buncombe, and I'm not going to criticize other superintendents, by the way, because I talk to them all the time, and every county's different, and the politics they deal with are different, and the conditions are different. But if you think about it, Henderson and Buncombe both had shut down completely. And for middle and high school, it wasn't a question of they slowly eased back into it. They went from 0 to 60 instantly. I didn't think that was wise, but and we don't count days on this situation, but in cumulative days, we're still going to have more days of instruction in them. So I think the Friday issue was wise for us because of what we're trying to do. Digital learning is not going away. We just got to keep making it better and use it as a tool, not as a replacement. What would I do differently? I I don't know, in retrospect, it wouldn't change much. I might have looked at doing high school a little earlier, but doing it in a way like I don't know, a Monday, Wednesday, Friday for one group, and a Tuesday, Thursday, and then switch off. I don't know. I don't. Uh, there's just only so many days in a week, so I don't really know if that logistically would have worked well, because we still need the professional development day. I would have to think on that, Meredith. I don't know. We're all running. I say this a lot. We're all running down a hall in the dark as fast as we can, and we're just hoping nobody left a desk in the middle of the hall.
That's a great metaphor. Oh, well, I appreciate you thinking through that, and your answers. Absolutely. I think the concerns about that term learning loss are just on the nose, right? Our kids absolutely have been learning, and we've all been working very hard. Um, and one of the things that I think a lot of educators have been doing is having to sort of revamp, retool, and do things differently this year. The conditions have determined that, and I know we've had a lot of conversations at our school and on our hall about things that we're going to keep that we would never have done if it hadn't been for the pandemic, but that we absolutely want to keep doing in our classrooms. And so in that reflective mode, what are some things that the school system has done that you, because of the pandemic, that you want us to keep doing, And what are some things that you just cannot wait to get rid of?
Well, okay, I'll start with what can I not wait to get rid of is something that I don't think I'm going to be allowed to get rid of. And that is, we are at a very important juncture in the state of North Carolina right now. And that is the opportunity. And I'm working with some committee on standards and accountability. We are been talking to our new state superintendent and others. And I don't know that we always agree, but I will at least say this: at least she will engage with us, whereas the previous one would not. She at least has some understanding of what's going on, where the previous one did not. So, what would I do differently? I would, first of all, growth needs to count more in schools because we're trying to see how a student progresses. The second thing, this infatuation on proficiency has has got to have a serious look. By the way, there's a bill out there right now. I didn't mention this one where somebody wants to remove any growth from high school accountability. It's all based on proficiency. So I mean, there's something in the water. I'm telling you, but you know, we want standards. I know you all want standards and you maintain high standards. It's not a question of we're saying, oh, well, we don't want to be seen if we're meeting standards. It's just that we have this infatuation and dependence upon a proficiency score that is a snapshot in time of just a few of the things that are learned in high school. And so a broader base, and this is kind of a segue into what I would like to add, the broader base look that we're talking about on a statewide level is, why don't we tried this 4 years ago and it didn't fly with the Senate, but why don't we take this opportunity coming out of a pandemic, because we've learned some things, to try to think, what is it we are doing with students that are more than just a measure of how they do on 5 different areas, for example? Why don't we look at the broader thing? How are we measuring their social emotional resiliency? Because I can tell you, working shifts at DuPont when I was younger in college, I've said this before, but there were people that you worked with that you could tell they had some issues left over from childhood. They never got past it. And so what are we doing about that? Making sure the kids are dealing with the trauma, which has been very real during the pandemic. What else are they learning? For example, if you are a member of a club organization, or you're a member of an athletics team, or you are a member of band, I mean, look at all the opportunities we have, art guild, all those types of things that build leadership. See, Rebecca, they build leadership. So why would we not want to include that? And when I say include, I don't mean count it, because that's the other thing. They want, if it moves, they want to measure it. So why don't we just acknowledge it? This is why students are successful. Ultimately, what's the goal? I mean, we want kids to read well. We want them to do all those things. Don't get me wrong. But really, at the end of the day, you know what the measure of a student is. The measure of a student is if they walk across the stage and get the diploma. And and if they're not getting that diploma at a timely manner, then what do we have in place to help them get it eventually? Maybe it's in their 5th year. Those are the things that I would like to change. I think the state has an opportunity to look at that this year. Will they do all of that? I don't know. I think the test waivers were logical. I'm glad we have those. Schools are not supposed to be judged by a report card grade this year, which is really largely criminal, because that's just a measure of poverty across the state of North Carolina. So I'm rambling on again, but those are just some of my initial thoughts.
So what are some things that we've done in our district that, because of the pandemic, that you'd like to keep?
I would like us, admittedly, I am competitive by nature, but I hope I'm competitive in a good direction. I would like our district to be the absolute best in our state on the type of blended learning that we can offer. That's not just face to face, but it's a blend of face to face with our remote instruction. Some of that requires better technology. I mean, some of that requires broadband. Broadband in North Carolina, don't get me started on that. That's pathetic. But I would like our, admittedly, I would like our system to be the very best in quality blended instruction and what that can look like.
It sounds really good. Um, so obviously the pandemic is sort of dominating life for everyone now. And so in thinking about the pandemic and now that especially our middle and high schools are back in Plan A, there seems to be a little bit of confusion about quarantine procedures. And so one question that we have is, has the definition of close contact changed for our students? Go ahead.
It has, not just for our students, but in various groups. You know, when we started out, it was a 6 feet of distancing, and then they slowly changed it. As conditions improved to recommended 3 feet. And then there's the game of semantics in there that they've changed. Required and recommendations are two different things, and so they have some recommendations now. It's not just for schools but for other groups that are recommendations but not requirements. And so we try to follow those as clearly as we can. We use the CDC. We also use what Mandy Cohen puts out for the North Carolina DHHS, which is, and the governor, which are the most important sources for us on that particular issue. And I talk to our attorneys all the time. I said, this is what we're doing. Is this kosher? Um, and so that's basically what we're doing right now. It's recommendation. I walked into a class at Rosman High School this week that normally when I walk into that particular part of the building, I've seen that class on one day has, I think, 8 students, and one day has 10 students, I think. No, maybe it's 12 students one day. I don't know why it's split like that. But anyway, and then I walked in and they were all 20 of them in there at the same time. And at first it looked like, wow, boy, there's a lot of people in here. But then again, I got to thinking, okay, well, but 20's normal. Now we're not back to normal yet, but 20's normal. And they had done a pretty good job of spacing them out. They were within the limits and the legalities of it. Were they all, if I measured from person to person, were they all exactly 3 feet? Probably not, quite frankly. But they were not sitting as close as they normally would have before the pandemic started.
So what about the definition of close contact that the health department is using?
Oh yeah, you asked me. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
School nurses, we're not the medical experts. I go with what they tell us. If they tell us that 8 students need to be quarantined and tested, we inform those parents. Sometimes, and this has been controversial with really with some parents. They want to know everybody in the school system. They want to know that particular student. Why are they not in school? And some of that's a protection thing for the privacy of the students. So I rely on our school nurses. We have 4 really good ones in the health department, and we, in essence, a simple answer is if they tell us to do something, this is what we do. They also go the other direction. If they, based on their analysis, and they've been pretty consistent, I think, if based on their analysis, we don't need to quarantine or shut down, then we don't do that. However, that does not prevent us from notifying of potential exposures. We do that with parents, and we also, it does not prevent us from doing the cleaning. We're still doing cleaning. I think that's just wise. I don't think it's a coincidence this year that we haven't had much flu. And I listened to one individual who comes into the gym early at the same time I do, said that he kind of thinks that some of this is overblown and made up. And he said, you notice you're not talking about flu. And I said, well, they might not be talking about flu because we're all wearing masks and washing our hands. So maybe that's why we don't have a lot of flu. Um, I try to say those as nice as I can because I think they mean well. They're from a different era.
Absolutely, I definitely can identify with that situation. Um, well, we've seen an uptick just on our hallway in the number of students who are having to quarantine, which of course we're concerned about them. We're concerned about their families, um, and that's right, Charisma. We have been asking people to stay home if they have COVID or flu-like symptoms, and I think that the students and parents, by and large, have been really great about being overly
I
cautious.
think
And
about
I'd
95% have been pretty good.
yeah, and I'm really, really grateful for that. But we have seen an uptick in the last few days just on our hall. And so, of course, we're concerned for those students, for their families. And it's important that, everybody is following COVID safety protocols. And I think by and large, students and staff are doing a really good job with that. But one of the questions that we have is because of being in Plan A and having everybody back together, have you considered doing something to help maybe ease both student, staff, and the public's mind by giving access to some data? Like I know Buncombe County and Henderson County have a public data dashboard. Is that something that that y'all have been considering?
It's interesting you bring that up. We've talked about that. Just just like county governments and school systems are somewhat their own entity within a county, um, health departments largely operate that same way. And so we've had that discussion before, and I'm not trying to lay the blame on pass the buck on anybody else, but the position that we've encountered is that that is not something that Transylvania County needs to do, and so we have not done that. I don't know. It may be, and I'm only speculating. It may be that maybe they're worried that being a smaller county, people will figure out who it is. I don't know, um, but we do not currently maintain that dashboard. And I've gotten that question a lot, and I've asked our health professionals about that. And again, not to pass the buck, because I guess the board, if they decided to, they could do what they wanted to anyway. We've just been advised that that's not necessary to do. And we also have had lower numbers than some of the counties around us, our counterparts. You are right about an uptick. We are watching that. That's not just here, that's statewide, and well, it's nationwide. There is an uptick, and what I suspect it is a combination of I think the UK variant is more resilient and aggressive. That may be, it's sort of like, you're always told to take all of your medicine, your antibiotics when you get sick, because if you don't, then it allows the virus to build up some level of immunity. And I don't know if that's what's happened on the UK variant, but it seems to be more aggressive. The vaccines seem to work. Even the Johnson works, although they're suspending that right now as they check on this issue of, I think 6 people developed some blood clots. But yeah, I think we're going to have that, and it seems to be hitting young people in particular. It seems to be attacking kind of that 18 to 24-year-old group, who I don't know if they're just COVID weary and they're tired of it. I will tell you, every year there's a weekend in March, and it's just 3 days, a weekend in March. I'll be openly honest with you that my best buddy from college, his wife and my wife, we've always gotten together and we have dinner, and we go down we go down to North Myrtle Beach because they have the St. Patrick's Day festival there. That's just it's just something we've done for a very long time. Last year, we were down near the weekend at Governor Cooper closed down North Carolina. Um, this year, they didn't have the festival. And we were actually somewhat stunned because, we've tried to be careful the last 2 years. We didn't go anywhere. We just kind of grilled out where we were. It was just nice to see them. All of us, the two of them and my wife and I had already had our second shots. So that was the other determining factor. But Meredith, I'll tell you, I don't know if you know much about North Myrtle Beach, but there's a famous, one of their famous venues is Deckers. And we were standing on the balcony looking. You could see Deckers, and I bet you they were not only having a live concert, but I bet you there were 3,000 people in there, and they weren't wearing masks, and they were on top of each other. And I told Ed, I said, we're going to read about in the paper a massive outbreak. I only mention that because if I had to look over there, I'd say the majority of them were about 21, 22 years old. Um, that doesn't mean that our kids are not going to have that exposure, but I want those kids to get their vaccinations. That's the only way we're going to develop a herd mentality, not mentality, a herd immunity. But we are watching it. We're watching the numbers very closely, and we have the right to suspend some things or quarantine as needed.
Right on. Speaking of getting young people vaccinated, we're so grateful for the coordination with all of the partners to get our 16 plus population vaccinated. So I have two questions about that. One, do you know roughly how many or like what percentage of eligible students did that? And then two, might there be a second round so that students, having had more time to think about it, read about it, might have another opportunity?
Okay, one, I do not know how many of our students, Dr. Weaver probably does. That's something he keeps up with. I'll have to ask that question. I don't know how many. Secondly, I think the long range plans, if I understand it, I think it's Pfizer's done some testing as low as it's either sixth graders or 6 year olds. I can't remember which, something with six. I'll have to look back at those notes. But I think the goal is eventually get everybody. So my assumption is that although they've suspended Johnson and Johnson, right now the only one that's approved for below 18, I think, is it Pfizer? Is that the only one? Because I think all of us got the Moderna. As further testing is being done, and I know they're doing that, I think they will start dropping that down. But I don't know that there's any specific plan to have like a mass vaccination day. But I do believe that the plans from the health department are to continue to offer it as it opens up. And right now, I think my understanding is if you are eligible, you can get a shot. You don't have to go through some other thing now. It's just a matter of where you go to get that shot.
Good deal. So I guess one of the reasons it to me feels very important to offer that through our schools is really an equity issue about transportation. So I would just love to see.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. You're talking about having them at the school.
Yes.
Good question. I'm not opposed to that at all. I'll have to ask April if there are plans for that. There might be, and I just don't know about them.
Sure.
That's 2-year-olds. Wow. I didn't know that, Josh. That's good. I don't know. I'll have to check on that. I'm not opposed to having them at school. I think that's probably a good idea because there is an equity issue. The other thing about equity, and this is concerning, it's based on a lot of other things, but we still have a reluctance, even in our community, just be aware of this. We have a reluctance in our community, and I think it's nation and statewide, that some African Americans are not getting vaccinated. Two reasons. One, accessibility to get the vaccinations, one. And then the other thing is just a resistance to take the vaccination. So that's bothersome to me because, if you're making a conscious choice not to do something because of your belief, that's one thing. But if you're not doing it because you don't have access or you have the wrong information, that's disturbing.
Yeah, and I've actually heard a lot about that too, and I think a lot of that is rooted in some issues with systemic racism and the fact that,
Probably.
you know, we things like the Tuskegee experiments. I mean, for a long time, African Americans have been done quite wrong by the medical institution.
Oh, African Americans and Native Americans both.
Yes,
Sterilization. I mean, you can go down a list of horrendous things that happened in the 20s and 30s, and even later.
yeah, absolutely. So I think there's some distrust in the medical of the medical community, understandably so. Josh, did you have something that you wanted to add or say?
Yeah, I've definitely been playing health expert in my class and trying to sift through, some media information and hear the disinformation that some of our parents particularly are putting out on our kids. And I just wonder, I know in our health curriculum in ninth grade, there is a focus obviously on teenage and adult health and healthy habits and whatnot. And I wonder, a lot of our kids are past ninth grade. Is there a way we could bring some conversation about vaccines and even the process to get emergency use approval to some of our other classrooms? And I know that's probably too much for our school nurses, but could we have a group or a cadre of people who could go to, let's say, English classes and have 10-15 minute conversations and just say, you can have some discussion at the end, but here are baseline facts, and they're sort of indisputable right now. There may be questions, but the claims by just some ideologues out there are just ludicrous, and maybe bump those numbers up just a little bit in terms of students and maybe their parents even getting the
I
vaccine.
spend part of my week each week talking to some of those ideologues. Man, I tell you what, if some of them really knew the root of why they believe what they believe, they would be astonished because you can trace, um, not to get us off in the weeds, but you can trace some of what they believe off of social media to a deliberate misinformation campaign by somebody else at some point, and then all of a sudden it becomes fact. Um, I don't know, Josh. That's when I've got to ponder how we can do that. That was. I like to try to have an answer for everything. I've got to ponder that one. I know that there's some information out there. The problem is wading through the information. Um, you know, I've personally just gotten pretty much to the point now that if I look at Facebook, and I think Meredith, you're a friend, I think you can tell my Facebook, if there is a post anywhere recent, it's either a picture of something in nature, a sunrise, or maybe my grandkids. Occasionally, super boring, like this is what I'm grilling tonight. But that's pretty much the extent of it. And I check it just to check birthdays, primarily of friends, and I'm not even good about doing that regularly. I only mention that because I think if you make yourself live on social media, Josh, those ideologues, they no, I know you don't, but I mean those ideologues, they they start to believe that that's where they get their best news, and so the biggest thing for our kids is not just 15 minutes for a vaccination information. It's just an ongoing process of trying to train our or re-educate our society into having a little bit of a level of discernment on what they're reading. Is it actually factual or not? And then the to understand that there are indeed legitimate sources of news. And if you don't, for example, if you don't believe NPR, and you don't believe CNN, that's fine. But you should at least read CNN and read NPR and then read your Fox News stuff, and then you make the decision. At least don't limit yourself, I guess is what I'm saying. I'll look into that. That's a good question.
Uh, well, it is, right? And as Josh and I can both attest to the massive efforts of folks at Brevard High School to teach media literacy to our students. We try very hard to do that. Well, all of us, besides you, have a faculty meeting to go to, but want to thank you so much for being here today, for meeting with us, for having these
Oh, thank you.
conversations. We're really, really appreciative. And also want to say that just as much as our job has been exceedingly difficult this year, we know that yours and all the staff at the central office, that it has been no picnic for y'all either. So thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for doing the hard work. That's why they pay y'all the big bucks, right? So
Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, it's always an honor to be here. I didn't think I'd be here in this position growing up in Cedar Mountain, but I had good teachers when I was growing up. I will borrow a line from Bo Williams. And I know you all know Dr. Williams, but Bo used to say that if he might not like the way the plane was flying, but if the plane crashed, he said, to just know that I was at the wheel when it crashed. So it might have been my fault. So, I mean, if it crashes, I'll take the responsibility. My fingerprints are on the wheel, but I think we've got some good things going here. I think it'll get better. I think we've got a lot of issues that we can be proud of. And I think in closing, I would just say that it's not just about the schools, even though the schools are the center of the community. Our county really has got to come to grips with infrastructure, and not just physical infrastructure, but social infrastructure. Young families can't afford to live here, and that is our bread and butter, but it's also very important for our retirees, and many do, to understand that you've got to have a blend of people, and we don't have enough blue collar jobs in this county, quite frankly, and that's hurting our schools, but it's also hurting a lot of other things. So we got a lot of work to do.
always. The job is never finished. But thanks again for being here this morning, to all of you, and have a wonderful and relaxing weekend.
You too. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye, y'all.